Welcome to Spiritual Calisthenics. Today on April 4th, we are entering into the 5th week of Great and Holy Lent, and so we continue along with the readings from Isaiah, Genesis, and Proverbs. And in today's readings of Isaiah, we see again the idea of the retribution that is coming. Therefore, thus says the Lord concerning the king of Assyria, he shall not come into the city, or shoot an arrow there, or come before it with a shield, or cast up a siege, a mound against it. By the way that he came, by that same way he shall return, he shall not come into the city, says the Lord. For I will defend the city and save it, for my own sake, and the sake of my servant David. Now, of course, while this is talking about the physical attack that the Assyrians are trying to rage up against Jerusalem, this is, of course, speaking about the heavenly Jerusalem and the enemies of hell, and that God will defend his people from the armies of hell. And the angel of the Lord went forth and slew 185,000 in the camp of the Assyrians. And when men rose early in the morning, behold, these were all dead bodies. Then Sennacherib, the king of Assyria, departed and went home and dwelt in Nineveh. And as he was worshipping in the house of Nisroch his god, Adrammelech and Sharezer, his son, slew him with the sword and escaped into the land of Arat. And Asarhaddon his son reigned in his stead. So we see kind of the barbaric nature of the Assyrians. The idea that when we're not godly, that your own children will rise up and kill you. In the days of Hezekiah became sick and was at the point of death. And Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amoz, came to him and said to him, Thus says the Lord, set your house in order, for you shall die. You shall not recover. Then Hezekiah turned his face to the wall and prayed to the Lord and said, Remember now, O Lord, I beseech you, how I walked before you in the fullness and with a whole heart, and have done what is good in your sight. And Hezekiah wept bitterly. Then the word of the Lord came to Isaiah, Go and say to Hezekiah, Thus says the Lord, the God of David your father, I have heard your prayer, I have seen your tears. Behold, I will add 15 years to your life. I will deliver you and the city out of the hand of the king of Syria and defend this city. So do we see the difference here between these two kings? The one in arrogance tries to go against the people of God and loses everything, whereas Hezekiah humbles himself, prays to God, and as such is given more time. As we continue in Genesis, and I apologize again that we have not had spiritual calisthenics in a while, but we are in the story of Abram and Abraham, soon to become Abraham, and how he has left his city and his people and is now dwelling in the land of Canaan. So Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, while Lot dwelt among the cities of the valley and moved his tents as far as Sodom. Now the men of Sodom were wicked, great sinners against the Lord. So Lot is Abram's nephew, and he came with Abram and Serrai on their way to Canaan. And they part ways, and Lot is going with his family to dwell in the land of Sodom and Gomorrah. And as we will see in a little bit, he is the only righteous person. In fact, as we continue down Genesis, as we're going to be soon introduced to the person of Melchizedek, which is a very, very important part of the story of Genesis, which I'm very excited for us to talk about. But Lot is going to get into some trouble. But that's for another time. The Lord said to Abram after Lot had separated from him, Lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are, northward and southward and eastward and westward. For all the land which you see I will give to you and to your descendants forever. I will make your descendants as the dust of the earth, so that if one can count the dust of the earth, your descendants also can be counted. Now, of course, this seems like hyperbole to say, okay, we're talking about a small little tribe in a small little area of the world, and you're being told that if all of the dust in the earth could be counted, then you could also count the descendants that will be of Abraham. And of course, we're not talking about blood. We are talking about descendants of faith. For Abram is a person of faith, and this is what's important. Arise, walk through the length and the breadth of the land, for I will give it to you. So Abram moved his tent and came and dwelt by the oaks of Mamre, which are at Hebron, and there he built an altar to the Lord. And again, and we see this every single time that Abraham has an encounter with the Lord. Again, he's Abram at this point. He will be named Abraham later. But every time he has an interaction with the Lord, he builds an altar and worships. This is the actions of faith that we are supposed to emulate. Finally, going into Proverbs, The fear of the Lord is a fountain of life, that one may avoid the snares of death. In the multitude of people is the glory of a king, but without people a prince is ruined. He who is slow to anger has great understanding, but he who has a hasty temper exalts folly. In other words, when we are patient, we're not so quick to fall into stumbling blocks of our own passions. A tranquil mind gives life to the flesh, but passion makes the bones rot. In other words, when we are hurrying so much, we fall into ruin. We need to quiet our minds. He who oppresses a poor man insults his maker, but he who is kind to the needy honors him. The wicked is overthrown through his evil doing, but the righteous finds the refuge through his integrity. Wisdom abides in the man of understanding, but it is not known in the heart of fools. Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. A servant who deals wisely has the king's favor, but his wrath falls on one who acts shamefully. A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. And this is something, this line, a soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger, is something that we often find in our own lives, in which people sometimes will say, oh, I'm going to deal with that person. I'm going to show them who's boss. But what does that do? Ultimately, we don't actually prove our point. All we do is make that other person angry and wrathful, and they're not listening to us at that point. They close off their mind. And so now all we have is an angry person who now wants to plot against us because we have shamed them. The idea of I've put them in their place doesn't actually build respect or love. All it does is make a person angry, hateful, and less likely to deal with you. Whereas a soft word turns away wrath and allows us to actually have dialogue. The tongue of the wise dispenses knowledge, but in the mouth of fools pours out folly. The eye of the Lord are in every place, keeping watch on the evil and the good. A gentle tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness in it breaks the spirit. In other words, when we are perverse in our hearts, our tongue will no longer be gentle, will no longer bring people to God, will no longer help, but it becomes something horrible. And so it's important that we keep our integrity. I hope that you've enjoyed today's spiritual calisthenics. Have a blessed and wonderful day.